Many times I've been asked what's the secret of our labels, because our labels are very iconic, are very unique. One of the reasons of the success of Feu di San Gregorio over the past 20 years. Now, the labels have a name. The name is Massimo Vignelli. Massimo was one of the greatest Italian designers in the history of design, was a graphic designer. He designed incredible things that still today are quite famous, like the brown bag of Bloomingdale's or the underground map of New York. And he also, proudly for us, he also designed our labels in 2001. Actually, he didn't design, he redesigned. And that's important because he was able to convey in a new image, revolutionary image, innovative still today, so modern, in a new way, the history of our winery, the history of our terroir. Because we started in '86 and we redesigned our label in 2001. So we had a little path that we already did in the first 15 years of our story. And in the first 15 years of our story, we used this label. This label was, for me, very beautiful, but quite traditional. It already showed that this winery had a great history of terroir, history of the winery. The winery name is Feu di San Gregorio, and Feu di San Gregorio literally means estate of Gregory the Saint, of Saint Gregory. Saint Gregory was a very important pope, and under his pontificate, the first textbooks of winemaking were codified, and we all know the importance of the church in the history of winemaking. The history of winemaking started with the Greek and the Romans, but then the church preserved really the expertise of making wine up to the modernity. And if you know, you all know that Dom Perignon was a monk, so in a way the church took the legacy of the Romans and brought it to modern times, to the French and the British merchants. And so we decided to call ourselves after Gregory the Great because he owned the property in this area where the winery is located today, part of his personal wealth that was called at the time Patrimonium Sancti Petri, and he used to make wine in this area. So that's the reason of our name, so a name that recalls a great history. And we also decided back in '86 that our label would represent a portion of arts that was popular at the time. And the art that was popular in the period of Gregory the Great was the mosaic, the Byzantine mosaic. And these mosaics can be found in Ravenna, in Mausoleo di Galla Placidia. So the label had a mosaic, each different wine had different mosaic here, and then they all had Feu di San Gregorio here. And there were two things that were iconic. One was the mosaic itself. It was very beautiful. And the second was the gold character that was present in several areas of the label. The greatness of Massimo was redesign the label, keeping the best of what was already there and adding something by eliminating something. So what he did is that he kept the gold character, he kept the mosaic, but he added something by eliminating something, as I said. So he decided that our logo would be a square, so very iconic and recognizable, and that all our labels will be a double square. So the logo here, which becomes the name of the wine in each individual bottle, but then it's also our logo. And then the picture that represents each wine. So it's Fiano, is a little bird, but then we have Greco, then we have Falanghina, then we have colors for other labels. Here is the element characterizing each wine. The greatness of this approach is that if you put 10 of our labels one close to the other, you have a clear range and the winery is recognizable. And in a world like the wine industry, where every wine producer, and I am one of them, wants to, in a way, transmit something different in every wine they make and want to do a different label, something like that. I think having the same label for the same label idea and concept for the full range is not easy every day, because also myself I'm tempted every day to change something, but it's the strength of this brand. Some people tell us that it's not easy to recognize one wine from the other. That's true, but you always recognize the producer, which is the most important thing. The hand of the producer is what should come out from the label. At least this was the idea of Massimo. And the second great idea of Massimo was, let's make this label recognizable by the consumer. Let's try a way to avoid needing any interpretation of the label, any people explaining the label. Just make it clear, make it shining on a shelf. And then in 2001, if you think about it, was revolutionary. And still our labels remain contemporary today. That's because Massimo's lesson is that the good design is timeless. And I think this is probably not his most famous work, but it's definitely an example of what timeless design means.